Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. How
You
are
great.
you?
Yeah, perfect. I'm
Let me
good.
unplug this thing. I mean, you fell out of bed because it's what, 8 o'clock for you guys there?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy, that's
But with everything happening in the world, it's
you're scared.
LA is a terrifying nightmare.
You go to bed, you don't even know if you're gonna wake up. There's a war out there, and we fought,
Exactly.
won, or we lost it, but nobody woke me up to tell me the truth. Yeah, it's weird. How you doing? I mean, it's been.
I'm good. Yeah, it's I mean, it's all just been a bit crazy. I mean, it's like, LA last night looked like, it's interesting if nothing else.
Interesting is a word, yeah, a way of describing it.
Yeah.
Everyone that I talk to me from, different parts of the planet is like, man, we are living this, what's it called? The Truman show. Someone's going to take the cover and go, hey, you guys there, all right? So I'm going to drop more food and cover again. Phenomenal stuff, right? I mean, if we had to say, we watched a movie a few months back and the movie was exactly like this. Yeah. And we'd be thinking, that's fiction. That's very nice. Whoever came up with that script is like, top of the food chain. But now is just another guy.
It really is. I mean, it's like, what I don't understand is why they haven't all been arrested immediately. I mean, those 4 guys were all in that together. They've arrested one of them. They took ages to arrest him, first of all, which is a nightmare. And then second of all, they're just, these other guys are walking around. It's like they were all involved in that. And it's, I mean, I've actually only watched one of the videos, and then last night I watched the rest of them, and it was fucking horrifying. I mean, it's I was like, I can't watch more than like a bit of the video because it just makes me so angry and sad. I sort of want to punch something while crying. Like, it's a really weird emotion.
Well, my point of view is that I don't bother watching this kind of stuff. There's no point. You watch a video from one point of view, and then you make your mind up, and then I think you watch another one. It's like, okay, it was slightly different. And then you watch another. No, it was even worse. Those 2 videos are not correct. So it's like, just terrible. And then one of the things I was discussing this morning with Nido, by the way, I was talking to him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's back in the UK, and then he recorded one of those things in Ireland, and all of a sudden everything was shut down. So now he's been sitting in the countryside there, doing some yoga and stuff like that. We keep talking all the time about it, and it was like, man, it's surreal. And but let me go back to one click here. Even though despite the fact that we haven't seen one another in ages now, which I don't even remember how long ago was that. Tell us about that. So my idea behind this talk to people. I mean, I'm this world famous guy that interview people online. I have 11 followers now. 11.
Yeah, fantastic.
Very short than 100 million.
You got to start somewhere.
It's 11 million, 10 million is there.
Yeah.
And my point with this is perhaps to spend an hour talking to people that I haven't spoken for a while, and trying to understand a little bit more. And trying to this is going to work like anyone watching in 3 o'clock in the morning one of these days is going to come across this channel and go, oh, okay, so I'm going to talk to this guy and understand a little bit more about his life and stuff that he's doing that perhaps is something I needed. A bit of a inspiration, if you like. Anyone wants to become a top producer like you, and what the steps I have to follow.
Yeah,
definitely not. All right, cool. Of course, that's for sure.
Well, this is the thing is I actually I came to this thing being like, I want to ask Joe so many questions.
Oh boy. No. Let's not talk about me. Talk about you. Tell me about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, just to kind of give everybody like a bit of background, I've been in kind of production my whole life. I studied film studies at school, but I also studied religious studies. So I got 2 degrees at school.
Hold on. Oh boy. So we could talk about that one alone for another 5 hours. Tell me about it. So hold on. But people don't know you're an Aquarian like me, isn't it? Yeah. Because I wanted to be a priestman as a kid also too. So this is why I'm laughing about it. Carry on. So, but tell me, you were born here in the UK or born in the US?
I was born in the UK, and but my parents moved to the States when I was about 5, because my mom was a novelist, and so her career kind of took off in the States when I was like very young, and so we moved to Florida, and
Florida's in Mexico, isn't it?
I mean, I don't know. I'd have to check the satellite from the last 24 hours. It might be now, just drifting off slowly into the Atlantic.
All right then.
But so like I kind of I grew up in Florida, and and yeah, my parents moved back to England when I was about like 12, and I stayed in boarding school over there because my dad wanted me to go to this all boys boarding school in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, but I like girls and like to be around them. And,
Wow.
and so I was like, I just don't think it's for me. So I stayed in boarding school there, and it was great. It was a boarding school in Florida. And so it was sunny every day, and I could have a car in my second year, and it was near the beach. And so I was like, okay, this is a place I can sort of deal with. And and then after that, I went to college, and at college I studied film studies. And after about 2 years, I'd finished the film program, because whereas all my other friends were like spacing out their classes so they could have a lot of free time, I was like, well, I, I'm taking classes about films. Like, why wouldn't I just do them over, like back to back to back to back? So I like stacked my schedule. So I finished the degree in 2 years, and then afterwards, I sort of told my parents I could graduate, and I was like, but if I stay, like, I'd kind of like to study something. I'll never get the chance to just study again. So I decided to study religious studies. And so I studied a broad spectrum of religions, from Islam, Christianity, Christian ethics, but I focused in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism. But I studied Mahayana Buddhism, and I studied Native American religions, which were really cool. And I just studied like a broad base of religions. And then I finished school, and then I moved to Amsterdam, because I wanted to have an adventure.
Hold on.
My third interest was a lot of weed.
I should have a seatbelt on my chair here, because this is going to be like put a helmet on, even though I have no hair, but I should put a helmet on. Boy, carry on.
Yeah. So and I was very enthusiastic about weed. And so I was like, well, maybe I moved to Amsterdam. Let's see what happens. And I heard that Tarantino wrote Pulp Fiction in Amsterdam. And I was like, oh, well, I don't need talent or life experience. I just moved to Amsterdam, and I'm sure I'll write the next Pulp Fiction. Right. So anyway, so I moved there. And then after about a year, I was not earning a lot of money. And I was sort of writing a lot. But after about a year, I looked at all the stuff I'd written, and I was like, wow, that's really bad. And so I was like, shit, I better get a real job. So I got a job at an advertising agency, and there was this place, Wieden+Kennedy, that did all of the global advertising for Nike. And so I got a job as an in-house editor there. And then that was my kind of beginning of actually doing work in production. And then after about 2 years of that, I had the opportunity to go work in the production department on like the Nike World Cup ad. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. So I became a production assistant, and then that started me kind of along a path to producing a lot of commercials. So I've worked with a lot of big brands to do lots of different commercials. And then, and then after that, I did after my mom passed, I kind of left advertising for a minute. And then that's when I produced my first documentary film. And then that was the beginning of like going to film festivals and learning about how to produce actual films. And then that was the beginning of that. Man. So that's the sort of a bit of the background.
So about the religious story is something that I didn't know that, even though we've been punching more than I had for a few months now. But, for people who don't have an idea what I'm talking about here, we've been training Krav Maga together for a while now.
Yeah. And about 2 years.
It's been that long already? Jeez.
Yeah.
It's
it goes fast.
And every time I watch the videos and I watch my face, and I'm like, who's this guy? Old soggy face and look like like Uncle Fester. Oh, that's me. Wait a minute, what's going on? I'm getting old that fast? I can actually see it. Like, woo, it's bad.
And when you walk into class, you sound like a sort of like a symphony of walnuts. Your whole body.
Yeah, exactly. Now I've been taking so much time off that all the injuries have disappeared now. So I'm scared of coming back, and the first kick they'll be like, ooh, yes, I remember.
Ooh, yeah.
But anyway, it will be entertaining. So you moved to Amsterdam. Let me tell you a quick story about Amsterdam. I was in the UK first year, I think it was, and I had a friend of mine living there. So I jumped on a bus because I was, poor, broke. I jumped on the bus. We crossed over.
Still needed that weed.
No. It wasn't even for the weed. That's the worst part.
Really?
No.
Mushrooms?
I was very they call the martial artist. My body is my attitude.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That back in the day. So and then we landed we got to the main station, And as we stepped out of this place, the first thing I see is a bloke butt naked running up the whole road, like, and that was like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I was just looking at my girlfriend at the time. I was like, I don't know, but welcome to Amsterdam. I guess the place is like this all the time. Yeah, people are just more relaxed. And then after all, the police car came driving very slowly behind this guy, kind of, let's see where he's going maybe. And then eventually we can talk to the guy. So that was my 2 cents about Amsterdam, yes. But no, nothing.
How long did you stay? You were there for a while, right? Because isn't the Institute of Krav Maga over there as well?
Yes, there is another club called the Institute of Krav Maga Netherlands, which is another fellow American, by the way. He's American, but he's been there for 20 plus years, so he's Dutch now. And you have to split the group. You go Americans to the right and the Europeans to the left. He goes to the left now. He's the but yes, I traveled there a few times. I like the place there. It's very relaxed. I mean, Holland is the only place, I guess, in the world that you don't have to speak the language. You can speak English. Oh, look at that. Who's this guy?
This is Lily.
Don't tell me. Oh, okay, Lily.
Lily, say hello.
Call him Joe, most likely.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing about it, is like after college, I kind of wanted an adventure. I just sort of knew that if I didn't move someplace weird right out of college, I wouldn't do it. Like I went to college in New York City, and I was just like, a lot of my friends were like getting jobs in like law firms or like different companies in New York. And I was like, you're going to be in New York the rest of your life. And like, it sounds great, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but you're 22. What are you doing? Like suddenly like getting on this corporate track in New York. Now, granted, I ended up, barely working, for a year. I ended up, when I moved to Amsterdam, I got a job at a place called Boom Chicago, which is a improv comedy place. And I was a rep for it. So I was like going to tourists and trying to hand out flyers for it. And we went to a lot of different, tourist spots. And the one place I used to go to the Anne Frank house. Because I was like, well, if anybody needs comedy right now, it's people coming out of the Anne Frank house.
After you leave this place, you go and laugh a little bit.
You're gonna need something. But what was funny is that I used to get yelled at a lot. Like a lot of people would come out and be like, I can't believe that this hallowed place you've come to like sell your comedy. But the people who did say yes definitely came. The people who were like, yeah, actually, that sounds like a great idea. We'll totally come. And all the money I made was based on people actually showing up. And if somebody actually showed up, I'd get a euro. Wow. And so although I got yelled at a lot, I sort of got kind of, I got a good hit rate of the people who came. And so I was then getting more people coming than anybody else. But man, I got yelled at a lot. There were a lot of people who came out of there and were like, what are you doing?
In Amsterdam, what do you expect? Amsterdam would be the coronavirus of, the Europe, because all the weird and the strange happens there.
Yeah.
Well,
it was like, it was funny, man.
And then coming back to London, when was that you decided to, from Amsterdam, you moved
came back? Yeah, my mom got sick. So my dad passed when I was about 19. And my mom, and I was about 25, and my mom got sick. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I've lived in a different country to my family since I was like 12, and I've been back and forth and everything, but it's time, like, it's not good enough really. Like, if my mom's sick, I got to come home. So I came home, and that was like 2008. Right. And I was like 25, and then about a year after I came home, she passed away.
All right.
And I have a younger sister, and so I was like, okay, I got to take care of her and make sure she's okay. And so I actually had no plans to come or to stay in London. But when that happened, I was like, okay, I'm gonna settle down. And London, although I was born there and I'd been back there every summer, every Christmas, like whatever else, London's one of those places where you need 2 years of living there before you're like, oh, I love this place.
I get you. Yeah, exactly. It's more than that for to get to that point where you land back at Heathrow Airport, you want to kiss the floor and hug everybody. If you're like, yes,
exactly,
I'm back. Yeah. Wow. But we always, you have any more family here apart from?
No, just my little sister.
Oh, okay.
I have a cousin. Who I see because she's my doctor. But that's it.
I want to go. Give me the prescription. Give me your little notepad, and I'll just fill it up with whatever I needed back then.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, why do they get the good drugs in America? Can I get some of those? And she's like, okay, fine.
Yeah, but the whole idea of the good drugs now is becoming something else, isn't it? Because that alone is causing a massive issue with that.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I've got a friend which used to train. He was a police officer, and then he moved to Texas, and he's a paramedic now there, or the what's it called, the EMTs.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, this is surreal. It's the stuff that we used to literally watch in the movies, and now I'm living the movie. So it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But
It's but I'm always careful with that stuff though. It's like I kind of, you know, even when I had, you know that I got attacked and the whole right side of my face got broken and my eye socket collapsed and it was nasty.
Your name is Steve Austin. You're $6 million.
Yeah, exactly. I have 3 titanium plates in my cheek because of it, and it's but the crazy thing was, it's like you know, after the first day after the surgery, and I had these 3 surgeries back to back. But the first day after the surgery, I took like 1 thing of pain pills, and then that was it. I just don't like. I don't like you lose your brain, like any functionality, any part of your brain that feels switched on when you take those like opiates.
Yeah,
that just goes. So you feel like a sort of shell of a human being, and I just don't dig it. And so I think I took a day or 2 days of opiates while the pain was really bad, and then when the pain kind of subsided a little, I was like, okay, no more of that shit.
That's it. Wow. Yeah, well, some people have that, and all of a sudden, you know, can I have some more, doctor? You know, those 24 you gave me, I want another 50. No, sorry,
yeah, exactly.
For you, son. And guys on the street buying heroin because it's pretty much the same, and it's probably cheaper. And you can have access to that. Yeah, it's Well, that's it. So regarding those the movies, I mean, you showed me some stuff that you trying to produce, and you had many trips to the U.S. to try to get some stuff with Netflix. There was any of that stuff, because some of it worked, some of it didn't.
Yeah. So it's funny, the kind of hit rate. It's when I first left advertising to do film, I did three things that I worked on. One thing I developed called Welcome to the Punch, which was a British action film. It was executive produced by Ridley Scott, directed by my now business partner, this guy named Aaron Creevy. And it starred James McAvoy and Mark Strong and Andrea Riseborough. And so I worked on that. And then I did a documentary film called The Revisionaries that was about, it sounds really dry, but it was about education in Texas. That in Texas, there's a school board of 12 people, and those 12 people decide what all of the students in Texas are going to learn from their textbooks. So they create the school standards. Now, most other states in America do that district by district, but in Texas, it's very central. And so those 12 people, they have the biggest buying power over textbooks in America. So those 12 people have a huge sway over what school book textbook publishers publish. And so over the last sort of 10 years before our documentary, the Texas state textbook was in 65% of American classrooms, because all of the publishers would publish to the Texas standards first, and then whether they won the contract or not, would try to sell the books around America. And so 65% of American classrooms were these Texas state books, and they had things like they were trying to teach creationism alongside evolution in science classes. They're trying to say that creationism is a verified scientific theory, which it's obviously not. They were trying to downplay the role of civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, trying to remove Thomas Jefferson from the curriculum. They try to remove the term separation of church and state from the curriculum. So all these like sort of very small and insidious ways of pushing, manipulating the next generation of kids and pushing the information that's available to them and making it more conservative. And so I kind of did that documentary. And then another documentary about Bernie Madoff, you know, who's the guy who stole more money than anybody in the history of the world, $65 billion from the richest people in the world, because he ran the biggest and most successful Ponzi scheme ever. This hedge fund, he was chairman of the NASDAQ and whatever else. So I did these 3 films, and it was 3 years, and I did those 3 films, and so many people I was talking to was like, wow, you're 3 for 3. And I'm like, no, I'm 3 for 33. Like I've like, if you looked at my computer at that time, there were like 33 different projects in different folders, all at various stages of completion. But with film and TV, it's, you know, it's sort of the creativity of the possible. The majority of projects you work on don't go anywhere. And for example, this Corona thing is a really good example. We were talking to Netflix about a project that we were doing in Malta. It was called Il Condor, and it was a kind of Elmore Leonard, who wrote Jackie Brown and Sexy Beast. Jackie Brown and Out of Sight, and he wrote Get Shorty. And we did something that was like Sexy Beast meets Out of Sight, and it was like this cool gangster thriller set in Malta. And Netflix was super interested in it. And then Netflix reduced their budget, and then a financier came in and said, "We'll give you the 15 million to do it." So I was out here working with the co-production company that I work with, or that I was working with on this film, and we were working on that, and we had the full financing agreed, and then coronavirus happened, and we were out to, and the way that impacted us is that even though the financier, even still wants to do it, which locking the financing in is usually the hardest part of the whole endeavor. Right. And he's still down to do it. But the problem is, who is necessarily going to want to get on flights to Malta? Yeah. Who's going to want to be away from their families? A lot of talent doesn't want to go there right now. Then we've got kind of, other issues, like we sent the script to Idris Elba to star in it, and then he got COVID. So yeah, so the whole thing has kind of ramped down, and the other thing is we were going to go to Cannes Film Festival, and all these film festivals, a lot of things that most people don't know is that these film festivals are big because of the films they show, but also there's a big film market. And so just like creating any product, you want to know before you create the product, whether it's shoes or televisions, that you have a certain number of people who are definitely going to buy it, so that you know what your risk level is. And that's the same with films. You kind of put the package of the film together, you get the financing in place, you get the talent in place, and then what you usually do is you'll go to a film market, and there are film markets at Cannes, at Venice, at South by Southwest, at Tribeca, and some are better than others. But if you go to Cannes, it's the biggest international film market in the world. So if you've got your financing, you've got your script, you've got your talent, and then you go to meet the heads of all of the theaters in Germany, the heads of all the theaters in France, the heads of all the theaters in Spain, and they kind of they look at your project and they go, okay, we will sell you, we will buy the rights to exclusively show your film in this country, and we'll give you X amount for it. And usually what you'll do is, even though you've got the financing in place, you'll use that money to cover your risk of the financing before then making the film. So you go into making the film knowing that you have already got 60 to 80 to 100% of your overall financing backed by sales already. And then what people usually do for European films is they will not sell the United States. And so, because if you pre-sell these things, you get less back from the box office. Right. So what people will usually do is they'll create the film and the budget based on pre-selling these foreign territories, and they won't sell America. And then once the film is done, they'll go to America with the finished movie and go, how much are you going to give us? And how much of the box office are we going to get? And as a result of that, that'll be the majority of their financial upside.
Man, so when people sit and watch a 2-hour movie, they have no idea what's going behind the scenes in order for you to sit down there and watch this movie, because that's pretty much nothing compared to the headache and the
yeah. Just getting a movie made like that is a huge achievement. So when I see a sort of really shitty movie, I go, well, at least they got it made. But I think that's what's interesting about the Netflix model, however, is that Netflix just gives you the money, pays you your fee, they own everything. You don't get the thing is with a movie like Avatar or Titanic, or actually a great example is like the Blair Witch Project or John Wick, or these things that were actually very small budgets, and then they went to the box office and they made hundreds of millions of dollars. With those sorts of movies, you can make a buttload of money, whereas with a Netflix, even if you have the biggest hit that they've got, you never get another penny after the production.
Oh, right. So
because they pay it up front. It's a much more sort of commercial style model.
And now what I've heard from other people is that Netflix is sort of losing how can I put it this way? Netflix was not only Netflix. There was nothing else to fight those guys there. Now they have what they have. What you call it? Disney.
Well, they have
You know.
Disney, NBC, CBS, HBO Max. I mean, all these things are entering the space, and crucially, they're also pulling a lot of their content from Netflix. So, whereas Netflix had The Office and Friends and those sorts of things, I mean, and just keeping in mind, like Friends is in totality 400 hours of watching pleasure of content, and so just pulling that, NBC pulling that and putting it on their, or today anyway, but just pulling that and putting it on their own platform, Netflix loses 400 hours of content, enjoyment that they can give people for their subscription. So Netflix has taken on something towards like $5 billion in debt this last 2 years, because they know they have to push out as much content as they possibly can. Wow. And they're investing a lot in series, you know, and a lot in, you know, original films.
And the other thing, I was talking to actors. I mean, as I said, I'm talking to Milo, and it's like, I'm sitting here, we are not filming anything because everything comes from the US, comes from LA. Even though Ireland might be open, so we can, the actors, the directors, these people are sitting there writing stuff because they never had that much time to write stuff. Without the pressure of a deadline, because now it's like, what? We don't know how long we're going to be sitting here. So, but the creative minds, of course, are developing new stuff. So as soon as we are allowed to come back, do you see like a big rush of a lot of movies, a lot of things taking place, or how is it going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's those are all the conversations we're having right now, and I think that the two things are sort of happening. Like, so for example, we're still hopeful that we're going to get Il Condor made. However, we're very realistic that we may not. Okay. If actors say we do not want to get on international travel to somewhere like Malta, we just don't want to do. International travel has become a much more scary environment because planes recycle oxygen and whatnot. So, you know, and we've also got an ensemble cast. And like, for example, in our script for Il Condor, there's a prison riot at some point. And that's a lot of extras, all who have to interact with each other, all who have to be closer than 6 feet, you know, and so the question then becomes, is that film not going to get made because of new social distancing measures and things like that? And so we had a conversation with the same production company that we're doing Il Condor with, and they said, listen, pitch us a couple of different ideas that we can take to Netflix, but the ideas have to, let's write something that only has 2 to 3 people in a scene at any given time, doesn't have any crowd shots, and is like contained and in one location. So we then pitched a werewolf movie, because we both like, my partner and I both like werewolf movies, and you know, and there really hasn't been a great one since like American Werewolf in London. So we were like, okay, well, we'll pitch something that is no more than 3 people in a scene at any given time. It's all about like these people who have been like a various group of people who have all been jailed for the night at a small jail outside of Los Angeles. We chose Los Angeles because there's a lot of great actors here who don't want to get on planes. So they're going to want to be closer to their home, closer to their kids, as their kids are sort of reintegrating to school and all that kind of stuff. And it's all set in a jail over the course of one night. And it's about 7 people, all who are like, there's a woman who's a sort of, you know, uppity rich housewife, and there's a meth addict, and there's all these people, and they're all locked in a prison, and there's a couple of different police officers, and 3 of them are werewolves and are going to turn into werewolves at midnight. And so there's this kind of tension, and there's this sort of notion of this sort of tinderbox about to explode. The whole concept of the approach to it is taking into account COVID realities, that we realize that we're not allowed to tell a certain amount of storytelling. And, you know, normally you'd, and actually there's something cooler about it. Like if you, once you take, it's almost like a, you know, a haiku is cool because it follows certain rules. And so if you set a certain amount of rules on something, sometimes you can create something that is really interesting. And so who knows if we'll sell it? We've written the treatment, we've done a little, like, you know, a little presentation. We're going to sort of present it and see if they want to do it. And
I guess a lot of CGI and all,
but maybe not
computer graphic and all this kind of stuff. And you can be, you know, even the same building and shoot different scenes, and all of a sudden you put it together. And when it comes to editing, and all of a sudden we are there fighting one another, and
Yeah.
which is weird.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff.
I think one of the things that'll be the first types of stories that come out of this is I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of places like Disney and Universal and DreamWorks are trying to get animated movies made right now, because animation, you can be social distance for the whole thing. Every animator can be in their own cubicle and
the voice
at home, and
of the characters can be done miles away. Send me a file.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So it's like that, you know, animation has actually at the moment a bunch of, you know, obviously I have a big background in commercials, and, you know, one of my best friends works in advertising. He's like, he runs an animation company. He's like, I've never been busier, because people still need to produce stuff. And even though there's a lockdown with animation, we can put stuff out.
And the guy probably said, I have more time to do stuff because nobody's going to knock on my door, because nobody's allowed to get out on the streets anyway. So I can work for more hours.
Exactly.
More. How crazy is that? So
Yeah.
it's going to be a completely, I mean, you have to reinvent what you already reinvented prior to that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know about you, but like I'm, you know, where I'm watching older movies, I'm watching like groups of people hug and hang out in groups, and I'm like, I don't know if that'll be in movies from now on.
Exactly.
You know, like,
You're gonna have
or maybe just not for a little bit, or
Monty
maybe
Python.
movies will pretend that this never happened. Who knows?
Monty Python, The Life of Brian, have like all the Roman, all those guys. I don't know, how many people are there? I don't know, 100, 200.
Yeah.
All the extras and stuff. So I don't think that's going to happen anymore. If it happens, it will be a computer. Take four people, a picture of 4 people, and just multiply them, make them with different faces, different, you know.
Exactly right.
And then carry on from there. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a crazy one.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand how much planning ahead is behind a movie or anything like that, isn't it? And
Yeah.
especially if you're going to go abroad, because then you have to take everything with you or hire from there. You know, have all
you get to know very quickly what, you know, I mean, we, you know, in commercials, obviously we're forced to do things faster and cheaper than ever before. And that's just been something that has been the case every year since the early 90s. But you start to realize that like certain things, like, you know, Prague became a really big European production hub. And for a long time, a lot of people would go there because it was cheaper to produce things out of there, and they had good crews and whatever else. But then what happened was that the head crews in Prague started looking at the budgets and going, wait, I'm earning a significant amount less than my US counterpart. And I've been trained by him over the course of 5 films now. Hold on, I should be earning a lot more. So Prague is now someplace that only starts to see savings at about 10 days. Once you shoot longer than 10 days, you start to see real savings still. But then you like, now you have to go to places like Romania, Croatia, Lithuania now has a good production environment, Slovenia.
So you should start coming to Harlow, man. Harlow is a beautiful place. Plenty of space.
Harlow's an amazing place.
Yeah. Oh,
if we didn't need light, I'm sure we'd be shooting here a lot more.
I guess the UK is not big for filming outside, isn't it? Yeah.
True.
Someone
Like
brings
a
you
lot of evening shots.
Yeah, Jesus. Wow. So and because I watched yesterday. I don't watch TV for a long time now. I have a look at the news every now and then, and that's it.
Yeah.
But was the guy, the chief, I don't know what his name is and what his title, but it's a beautiful title. He's the guy in charge of the whole movie industry in the UK. And he was basically saying, like, you know, everybody's excited with the idea of coming back. We need, in other words, we need to make money. We cannot lock people up for that long. A lot of businesses, a lot of investment happening, and people want results. And, which will be interesting. But people are going to be kissing one another through, you know, someone hold a cling film here. Now I kiss you through this thing. And, you know, someone remove that later on a computer.
Yeah. It's funny, a buddy of mine has been out here, and he's been doing like social distancing dates. Like he's been doing like dates on FaceTime. It's very strange.
A date is
I'm very glad I met my girlfriend before all this happened.
My wife's father passed away a couple of weeks ago, and they had a funeral via Zoom, which was let me tell you, very weird experience regarding that. And also had 2 birthdays via Zoom, both of my kids at different birthdays. But it was crazy because we had my mom in Brazil, my mother-in-law in South Africa, some friends in other places. So it was a kind of, okay.
Somewhere you're more connected. You're
Yeah,
more likely to kind of reach out to those people and let
exactly.
them know
But when
what's
you
going
have to put someone to rest and via Zoom,
on. Yeah,
it's weird. It's the new reality maybe, but I'm not sure.
yeah.
And the other thing is people are so used to sitting at home now that perhaps they don't want to go back to work and get back into the crazy routine again.
Well, exactly. And it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, like I used to hire a lot of freelance personnel,
Right.
and they were people who came with very good reputations. And they used to say to me all the time, they're like, oh, well, I may be in a little bit late tomorrow because I've got this thing going on, whatever else. And I was like, listen, I know of your reputation. You've worked with some of the best other production companies in London. Like, I know you're diligent. I know you get stuff done, and I know you don't sit on your ass and do nothing. So like, I don't need you to be in the office, and it's like, be wherever you need to be, wherever you're going to be happiest doing this work.
Perhaps you can be more productive at home because you can, do your own thing. You can work until later,
Yeah.
and wake up earlier, and so on.
Yeah.
The fact that people have like an hour and a half commute to go to work, and then you work X amount of hours, which you're not, focused on what you're doing, but you had to be there, and then another hour and a half to go home. So that alone made people very unproductive. But now it seems that people are doing more because they can do whatever they want at home, isn't it?
Exactly. You get little micro breaks, which I think is always good. But also, as one of the reasons I got into riding a motorcycle again was because when I was working in Soho and I was traveling from East London, I was kind of, if I went on the tube, by the time I got into work, I was already so angry and frustrated and just, I was like this, like all morning. And so I got into work and I'd have to like have a coffee and sit down and be like, oh, that fucking guy who stepped on my foot, like whatever it was.
All the crazy.
I was angry. It was a misery. Whereas when I hopped on the motorcycle and I drove in, I was relaxed. I was in my own space, maybe listening to some music and my relaxed, ready to start. That's not the reality for most people. Most people have to take the tube. The tube is a miserable place to start the day.
Yeah, it's not very nice there. And how are you finding driving around LA now? I mean, this place is famous for the traffic being something out of.
Well, now it's like the early scenes from 28 Days Later.
Nobody.
Just nobody on the street. I mean, but that's why kind of, I was gonna come back to the UK when I was out here for some meetings, and then a lot of people. I mean, basically, we were out here for some meetings, and then Netflix shut down, and CAA shut down, and all these places shut down. And I was like, well, I could go back to the UK where they're saying you have to stay in your homes, or I can stay out in LA where you stay in your home. It's kind of nice. It's sunny. If you need to go anywhere, you can. You're social distancing because you're in your car, and this has been a very nice location to go through this.
It must be nice when you look at the weather forecast and then you point, oh, it's going to be a rainy day next Wednesday. Oh, really? I'm excited with a rainy day. It's not the opposite when I hear like, oh, we're going to have a sunny day, maybe in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
All right, then let's see outside and watch. But then the weather forecast is wrong and it rains all the time. And
so true.
But even though the last few weeks has been amazing, the weather here is phenomenal. And everything is dry already. We're complaining there's no water, no enough water for everybody. We're gonna suffer. We're doomed. But this is part of the culture, isn't it? Suffering is
yeah, it's part of the culture, and it's like I think that this whole thing has refocused. If this thing doesn't refocus our efforts on A, being nicer to each other, and B, the fact that we have been kicking the planet in the teeth for a very long period of time. If this doesn't wake us up to that, then we can't go back to business as usual. It just can't be like that. We need to go back to business. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, it can't be the same. It's got to be different, and it should be different. I mean, we've let this way we've been acting for, probably since the kind of really since the 30s, we've let this way we've been acting sort of be the only way, and we've just got to find a new one. Humans are smart. We should be able to figure it out.
I'm not sure. I'm sure you're gonna go back and money again. Yeah, let's go greedy. And it reminded me of that little cartoon about Mr. Goofy, driving his car. He's the guy, very nice guy, walking from his doorstep to the car. The little ant on the floor. He jumps over. Good morning, little ant. And all this. Sits on his car, closes the door, turning to the monster. Get out of my way, everybody.
my God, I remember that exact Goofy cartoon. It was great.
That was, back in the day, you couldn't understand exactly what it was. I thought it was funny. But then, of course, after you turn half a century, you realize that there was a lot of psychology involved in that cartoon. Whoever put that thing together was a genius,
Yeah.
And then, let's see. But many people for sure will find other ways of earning a bit of money without having to kill themselves and trying to, people who could work from home and sit in front of a computer will for sure do that. And
I mean, but I think that there was a guy running for election here for the Democrats called Andrew Yang, and he's a tech billionaire, and he was pushing a basic universal income for everyone because he was saying that automation and robots and AI doing people's jobs is going to be one of the biggest problems of the next 10 years. And I think that actually this COVID thing has sort of proved him right. That not only is everybody being sent home, but companies are looking into how to automate various human tasks at a higher rate now than ever before, and they're doing it in the under the auspices of human safety. Like, well, we're making it so that people don't have to come here and potentially get COVID. You're like, well, yeah, but you're making it so people don't have to come there at all and don't have to be a part of the system.
Yeah, if you're always buying stuff from Amazon, you just click a button, 2 days later it's on your doorstep, and that's it. By magic. You don't even know how it got to you, but
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Let's hope that after all this, we will go back to some kind of normality, and people can at least go out and enjoy, a beer or coffee, sitting outside, talking to other people. So that all of a sudden became the bigger goal now, is to be able to meet people again, which is great.
It's funny because I've fallen out of love with beer because I like a draft beer, and it's like I don't want to drink out of a bottle or a can. Like what is that?
There are many videos here in the UK with people going back to the pub and being very afraid of, they'll have a beer, talk to your friend. Oh, what? Have to talk to people? Yeah, you have to relearn all these kind of skills. And it's very, it's a very nice. Maybe that's money. We can start a YouTube channel of teaching people how to really, get back into the normal life, be a normal human being again, and how to do it. All the steps.
Yeah.
Right. But man, listen, we had a nice chat, and I found something out about you, but I didn't know that. So next time we need to sit down and talk about all this religious studies, because I'm sure
absolutely
more entertaining. And
I can bore you about that for ages. I tried to just gloss over it here.
I can't imagine that. I can't imagine. But it's been very nice. So thanks for the time. I mean, I know it's very early in the morning for you there. So
no problem. No problem. Well, I'm back on. I fly back on Friday actually, so I'll be back in the UK. My knee's nearly better. I got the knee brace on. That's nearly better. I've been practicing. I need to get out of this green belt and into a purple one.
Wow, that's a goal. There's another goal. But you told me times you will come back that I will not even wait for you. I will just wait for you. You call me, here I am. All right then.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been but now that
maybe he ran out of visa's so let's buy him a ticket and get him back here, because maybe the case is I'm walking down the street with a sign.
No, I appreciated that.
I'm here, my friend Wilson. Yeah, we need to get back to the UK. But that's fine. So, but thanks for the time, and I hope you have a good day, and whatever.
You too.
Today's what, Tuesday? I think it's Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
So good week and a weekend. So any plans for the weekend? Are you going somewhere?
No, well, I'm coming back to London. So I'll be on a plane Thursday, back Friday. Then I'm going to quarantine for 7 to 10 days. I know they say 14, but hopefully I won't have to do that much, and then I'll be back in the UK.
Wow, great, excellent. All right, so have a great time. Good flight back, and
you too, man.
See you when I see you here.
Absolutely, I'll give you a buzz when I'm back. Take it easy with Joe. Bye.